History isn't just what happened, it's what almost happened. A single vote, one decision, one moment. But what if it events went another way? Join us on the journey as we explore what if Montezuma had defeated Cortés. In 1519, Hernán Cortés entered Mexico with a few hundred men and a dangerous idea, that empires collapse when turned against themselves. In our world, he was right. The Aztec Empire fractured, allies turned, disease spread, and within 2 years, Tenochtitlan fell. But this was never inevitable because Cortés did not conquer Mexico. Mexico helped him do it. So what happens when it doesn't? In this timeline, first battles go the same. Steel cuts deeper than obsidian. Horses terrify, cannons echo like thunder. The Tlaxcalans fight the Spaniards fiercely and survive. Then they pause. They study the foreigners, and instead of alliance, they choose containment. Their reasoning is cold. If the Aztecs dominate, we suffer. If the Spaniards win, we disappear. So they do something history rarely remembers. They refuse both. Messengers move across central Mexico, warning of weapons that tear flesh open, animals that crush men underfoot. Strangers who take, demand, and do not leave. For the first time, the invaders are not mythologized. They are understood. In Tenochtitlan, Moctezuma does not hesitate because this time he does not face uncertainty. He faces isolation. The Spaniards have no allies, and that changes his calculation entirely. He does not invite them in, he closes the roads. He sends envoys not with gifts, but with ultimatums. Submit, leave, or be destroyed. At the same time, something unprecedented begins. The empire bends, tribute demands are reduced, rebellious cities are granted concessions, old enemies are offered inclusion, not out of mercy, but survival. And beneath this fragile unity, resentment does not disappear, it simmers. Cortés advances anyway, but there is no grand march, no welcoming procession, no emperor to seize, only war. The terrain becomes a weapon. Bridges are destroyed behind the Spaniards. Food disappears from entire regions ahead of them. Villages empty before they arrive. At night, arrows fall from darkness. Fires surround camps. Drums echo across hills. Psychological warfare replaces ritual combat. The Aztecs are learning, and learning quickly. Spanish advantages begin to erode. Horses are targeted and brought down. Isolated soldiers are overwhelmed. Armor becomes a liability in heat and exhaustion. Cortés is no longer advancing, he is being hunted. Then comes smallpox. It spreads through cities, through families, through armies. It kills without distinction. In our world, it shattered the empire. Here, it nearly does. Entire neighborhoods fall silent. Leadership fractures. Fear spreads faster than the disease itself. But something holds. The narrative changes. Priests declare it a foreign curse. Leaders enforce containment. Succession is managed, barely, violently, but managed. At the same time, the Spaniards suffer. There are too few of them. Each death matters. Each illness weakens the whole. This is no longer conquest. It is mutual destruction. Cortés realizes the truth too late. He cannot win, he orders retreat. But the roads are gone. The causeways are watched. The land itself has turned hostile. What follows is not a single battle. It is a series of collapses, ambush after ambush, starvation, desperation. Men abandoning armor to run faster, throwing gold aside to lighten their load. Most never reach the coast. Cortés survives, but barely, and what he carries back is not treasure. It is warning. Spain does not forget. Cortés's failure is not treated as a lesson in restraint, but as an insult. The crown cannot allow a defeat to stand. So it responds the only way empires know how, with persistence. New expeditions arrive, not as bold conquests, but as calculated incursions. Smaller forces, better supplied, more disciplined. They avoid deep inland pushes, instead they burn the edges. Coastal settlements are attacked, trade routes are disrupted, captives are taken, what cannot be conquered is destabilized. Over decades, the conflict becomes cyclical. Raids followed by retaliation, diplomacy followed by betrayal, temporary peace followed by renewed violence. Mesoamerica does not fall, but it does not rest. Victory over Cortés reshapes the internal structure of the Aztec world. The lesson is clear: division nearly destroyed them, so unity must be enforced. The state evolves into something harsher. Military presence becomes permanent in previously autonomous regions. Tribute is restructured. but now tied directly to defense obligations. Local leaders are monitored, replaced, or absorbed into centralized control. Warrior culture intensifies beyond tradition, not ceremonial, not symbolic, practical, industrial in its own way. Weapons are improved, fortifications expand, training becomes standardized. Children grow up not just as citizens, but as future soldiers. And over generations, this creates a paradox. The empire survives because it is strong, but it must remain strong because it is never safe. Direct conquest failed, so Europe adapts. The strategy becomes slower, quieter, more insidious, instead of overwhelming force. Selective alliances, economic leverage, technological dependency. European traders begin supplying firearms to rival factions within Mesoamerica, not enough to win wars, but enough to destabilize balance. Political fractures reappear, not as open rebellion, but as controlled tension. Europe does not need to conquer. It only needs to prevent unity. And over time, that strategy works, not in a single decisive victory, but in a slow erosion. The effects ripple northward. Without the fall of the Aztecs, indigenous nations across North America recognize the pattern early. Foreigners bring trade, then pressure, then control. So they adapt. Confederations expand, political alliances strengthen, military coordination improves, communication networks stretch across regions, but unity is never perfect. And Europe exploits that. The continent becomes a layered conflict zone. Indigenous confederations versus European colonies, indigenous groups versus rival indigenous groups, European powers competing through proxy wars. The future United States emerges inside this instability, not as a dominant force, but as one participant in a crowded battlefield. Expansion becomes brutal, slow, and uncertain. Every mile gained is contested. Without access to Mexican silver, Europe faces a problem. It still wants global power, but now it must extract it the hard way. This reshapes the entire world economy. Increased pressure elsewhere. More aggressive colonization in South America, intensified exploitation in Africa, expanded slave trade to compensate for labor shortages. The Atlantic economy becomes harsher, less efficient, more violent. Global trade grows, but through friction, every gain costs more. Every expansion meets resistance, and this slows the rise of global empires while making them more desperate. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Europe begins to industrialize. But without the massive wealth influx from New Spain, the process is uneven. Industrialization still happens. European nations compete more aggressively with each other for limited wealth. Wars become more frequent, more economically motivated, more destabilizing. Meanwhile, Mesoamerican states are not industrializing at the same pace, but they are not collapsing either. They adapt selectively, adopting firearms and metallurgy, maintaining traditional agricultural systems, preserving political autonomy. The result is not parity, but it is not domination either. By the modern era, the world is no longer shaped by a single dominant civilization. It is divided. Multiple centers of power compete. European industrial states, enduring indigenous civilizations, hybrid societies formed through centuries of conflict. Global wars still occur, but they are different, less centralized, more chaotic. Alliances shift unpredictably. No single power can control the outcome. Conflict becomes the constant condition, not the exception. Cultural survival does not mean cultural peace. In Mesoamerica, indigenous languages dominate, traditions endure, identity remains intact, but this continuity is shaped by conflict. Art reflects struggle, ritual reflects survival, identity is tied to resistance. The past is not romanticized, it is remembered as warning. Today the world is not unified, it is balanced, uneasily, in central Mexico. The legacy of Tenochtitlan lives on in modern urban form. Indigenous governance influences national systems. Military readiness remains embedded in society. Globally, power is distributed across multiple civilizations. Economic systems are interdependent but fragile. Conflicts flare frequently, but rarely resolve fully. There is no single narrative of progress, only competing visions of survival. In this world, the Aztecs defeat Cortés, they prevent conquest, they preserve their civilization, but they do not escape history because survival changes them, it hardens them, it forces them into a world where strength must be constant and trust is rare. The conquest never happens, but the conflict never ends. And the modern world that emerges is not one of peace, but of balance, held together by the constant memory of how close everything came to collapse. What are histories, what ifs you'd like to see explored? Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe